So Stevie, you've been in coaching now 4 or 5 years, starting at the academy at Liverpool. Rangers, now come to another huge club in Aston Villa. Take me back to or starting at Rangers and how it felt and how sort of how much you've progressed certainly over the last few years.
Well, I think I certainly felt ready at the time when I decided to go up to Rangers. I'd had 18 months and more, rehearsing behind the cameras, coaching, finding a way how I wanted it to look when that call did come. So it was more about feeling ready when the opportunity came. And I think obviously a name like Rangers, the size of the club, the challenge, it was a difficult one to ignore. I had a chat with a few people, i.e. Alex Inglethorpe, Jurgen Klopp around that time, because I was obviously at Liverpool, and the feeling I had inside was go and take it on.
So you get to Rangers and you've got Celtic who are completely dominating, and it's all about stopping 10 in a row. Yeah. That was the name of the game when you got there. I mean, when you first got there, how difficult do you think that was going to be? Because there was a big gulf at the time between both clubs, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think from a personal point of view, I underestimated slightly the 10 in a row. Because my chats with the managing director, the chairman, and also the sporting director at the time, they weren't as obsessed with 10 in a row. Their remit was more, we want to get Rangers back. We want to start competing on alongside Celtic. The gap's obviously really big at the moment. We'd just been knocked out of Europe by a part-time team. There was some really heavy defeats just before I went in the old firms. So I think at the time there was a lot of pain in terms of that. They were more interested in, can we close the gap, rather than being obsessed with 10 in a row. But the very first moment I turned up in Glasgow, even before I had done my press conference, 3 or 4 people in service stations had mentioned 10 in a row. So very quickly I picked up that this 10 in a row's the main important thing, and part of the remit. It was obviously well documented that in year 3, if we never done it in year 1 and 2, which was probably unrealistic, the pressure was going to be huge in year 3.
Are those two giants of Scottish football, Rangers and Celtic, much bigger than you envisaged when you went there, or were you well aware of the size of the club?
Well aware of the size of both clubs. I'd been to all firm games. I'd obviously looked in and afar. I used to watch the games regularly on the Sky channels if we didn't have a game at Liverpool. But I think until you actually represent that club and you feel the intensity and the demand, it's very similar to Liverpool in many ways, that if you lose a game or draw a game, there's a real major inquest into that. And, the words crisis and all them words start coming up just on the back of maybe one game where you don't get the result that you should get.
Well, in the fans' eyes, it was stopping 10 in a row. You've mentioned that. You did that. And it almost felt, looking from certainly England and Liverpool, there was like legendary status for you. That, I mean, how big was that for you and your staff? And was the only slight disappointment was the situation we were all in terms of the pandemic, and you couldn't do it in front of the supporters in Ibrox? Yeah,
well, I seen Liverpool do it prior to that, and I thought to myself, the only thing that is missing is the crowd. It was very similar at Rangers. We were terrific throughout the season in terms of how we played. You still get the same buzz on the back of a win or a run of games, but it did feel different without the fans. But in terms of personal satisfaction, it was the first time I'd won for a long time, since the League Cup under Kenny. Also with what happened at the back end of my Liverpool career in terms of being so close to winning the league and it not happening, from a personal point of view, there was major satisfaction from achieving that. But outside, never say that. Really, it's more about the club, where the club had been, where it was now, and also the relief of achieving the remit that I was sent to do. I got a 4-year deal, and the major part of the remit was, can you get Rangers back to the top of Scottish football, and can you get us some pride back in Europe? They were the 2 major parts of the remit.
I think it's fair to say what maybe helped you a little bit as well, maybe in Rangers, was the fact that Celtic's manager at the time, maybe Brendan Rodgers, left halfway through his season, and you've seen the sort of reaction to him. You've done something similar in terms of leaving sort of Rangers, where they feel like the top dog, they could go on and win that title. How difficult a decision was it? And can you understand maybe if there is a little bit of frustration from Rangers supporters that you're not their manager no more?
Listen, I think the frustration always comes from the timing. And I think when you do it during the season, I certainly respect and understand people if they've got a bit of a gripe on that. But from my point of view, I can't control the timing of when it comes. But when you're in my position, you always wonder, will the opportunity come again? So when it was Aston Villa, to get the chance to come back into the Premier League, the size of the club, the ambition of the club, for me, the time was something that I couldn't think about. It was more about grasping the opportunity, and that's what I did. And listen, I leave with a heavy heart, but I also leave with my head held high, because when you sit down with a board and they set you a remit, if you don't do that, you get the sack. You get the sack. If you have a run of games where it's not accepted, you get the sack, and fans move on extremely quick from that. So for me, it was about, for once in my life and once in my career, thinking about me and what was best for me and my family, and that's the reason why I made this decision.
Okay, so you've made that decision now. I've spent the morning here with you at the Bodymore Heath. I mean, Villa is a huge football club. For me, the biggest club in this part of the country. And just coming here now and seeing the facilities, I mean, it is a massive draw. It's not just the Premier League. Aston Villa is a huge football club, isn't it?
Yeah, but listen, we've both been there and played at Villa Park many a times. You see the atmosphere, you see the environment to play at. Villa Park's a top place to play. So you're well aware of the size of the club, what Villa are about, just competing against them. But obviously, sitting down with the both owners, with the board, you get a feel of the ambition, where they want to take it. You come here and you see the facilities and what's provided for the players, and it blows you away. I mean, we were lucky enough to work at Melwood, which was obviously top. I know they've got a new training ground now, but this can go against any facilities around. We're England, we used to go to Arsenal, I've been to Spurs, I've been to them all. This can hold their own against them all. So I don't think many people see that from the outside, the structures that are in place, the size. I believe this place is ready to grow and evolve, and that's what excites me about taking the job.
I mean, you say grow and evolve, and this is a club that's won the European Cup, obviously a few years ago now, a long time ago. Yeah. But when you say it can grow, and every club and every team wants to talk about getting to the next level, I mean, what do you see in the growth in this place in terms of, you look at the infrastructure, the training ground, the stadium, you as manager now, the playing group that you've got, where do you think you can take Villa in the next 3 or 4 years? What's the ambition?
Well, I think the owners have certainly backed the ambition up. I think they've invested a lot into this group of players. Obviously, I've took it on the back of a disappointing run of results. But I look at teams now, and I looked at teams from afar before I took the job, like West Ham, like Leicester, teams like that part of a European journey now. Leicester won the FA Cup last year. I believe at a club like Aston Villa, for us to get back and be serious, it is to go on a European journey at some point. It is to try and compete for one of the domestic cups. But you've also got to be respectful when you're looking at the likes of City and Liverpool and Chelsea, where they're at now. They're in the 3 best 5 teams in Europe, in the world. So there is a big gap. That will take, obviously, a lot longer than the realistic ambitions for me.
You've just mentioned those 3 sides, and you think of the managers they've got, and of course lots of other great sides and managers within the Premier League, but was that a big draw to compete against the best managers in the world, basically, when you look at, Tuchel, you look at Jurgen Klopp, you look at Pep Guardiola and others?
Listen, I think I'm very respectful to them managers, and of course they're world class. For me, I'm a completely different part of the journey, if you like, in terms of what I've done or where I am. Of course, I certainly recognise that. But when I was a player, I was always someone who wanted to play in Europe against the best players and test myself. I always wanted to do that in the Premier League. It always gets mentioned about Scholes, Lampard, Keane's, Vieira's. They were the duels that excited me. Now, I don't want to get above my station and say I've come to the Premier League to take Klopp on or Guardiola. That's not the case. It's just a case of being in the best league in the world. Being able to coach some really high-level players and try and improve them and try and take the team forward, whilst competing against the best managers and the best teams in the world. If that doesn't excite you, then I'm probably in the wrong game.
You mentioned coming up against those players as a player, and you're seen as a Premier League idol or legend, if you like, for your playing career within the Premier League. I mean, how much of a draw is the Premier League when you're outside of it? So you're in the Scottish League, you're focusing on Rangers, I get that, but the Premier League's a beast, isn't it? It's massive. Listen, it's in your face all the time. Is it always there? You're looking back in, thinking at some stage I need to be back in that Premier League.
I missed it when probably slightly different to you, because I've seen some of the interviews you've done. When I stopped playing the Premier League, even when I went to the MLS, I missed being involved in it. I missed competing in it. So even going up to Scotland, I was managing a beast, and you're competing against a beast. But when you look at the Scottish League to the Premier League, it's completely different. They're in different levels. There's no two ways about it. That's not to be disrespectful. It's just facts and reality. And the Premier League's like that to many other leagues around the world as well. So when people come for you and they say to you, do you want to be part of a huge club with huge ambition to be back in the Premier League? For me, that was a decision I couldn't turn down.
You're new to the Premier League, you've made a brilliant start, certainly when your first couple of games, then you come up against arguably the best team, certainly over the last 3 or 4 years in Man City and Pep Guardiola, you just get edged out there. I mean, what can we expect from a Steven Gerrard team if someone hasn't seen your Rangers team, hasn't followed the Scottish League too much? What is a Steven Gerrard football team? What does he want from his team?
Well, I thought in an ideal world, I want teams to feel us, first and foremost. It was the way I like to play. All the best teams that I played in had a real structure and organisation about it, and they were aggressive. And you always knew, win, lose or draw, against the best Liverpool teams or even the best England teams, that they were aggressive, they're organised. Plus, they had real exciting players within it to entertain the fans. So in an ideal world, I know it's easy, every manager wants the same thing. If you ask any manager that question, they're going to say, I want to play hard to beat and play lovely attacking football. But for Aston Villa, we want to try and change the mentality of being a club historically where you could win one, draw one, lose one, and it'd be all right. You know, we want to become a team that finds better level consistency, that teams, when they come to Villa Park, they know they've been in a game, whatever the outcome of that game is. And we want to be able to go to stadiums anywhere really and be a real threat and try and take points off other people. We want to try and change the mentality of the players inside and the club, that it's just okay to be in certain part of the league. We want to try and change that mentality.
Going from sort of when we played, you're talking about maybe your influences, you know, at Liverpool in terms of coaching. I think it's fair to say the game's probably a lot more technical now. There's a lot more football players. How do you sort of have to go from your playing days of how you think you want the game to play to sort of maybe adapting to the way the game's sort of moving forward? And you talk about teams really playing from the back now.
Yeah, I think the players help you adapt to that, what they want to do, what they feel comfortable doing. I think when we played, a lot of defenders or a lot of teams would be really get it forward away from the goal. No, a lot of players now, especially at this level, I think they'd be the opposite. If you said to them, we're just kicking everything from the goal, they'd probably look at you from a different planet. So I think it's more the players help you adapt. But for me, it's always about common sense. If it's not on to play at the back, or a team is setting up to really press us high and they want to rob us in certain areas, let's use common sense and try and be adaptable. But the players and the level and where they're at, they've certainly helped me adapt. And I was quite lucky. I played for a lot of managers that did like to be really defensive and pragmatic, if you like, but also towards the back end with the likes of Brendan and stuff, he was very technical. He wanted to build everywhere. He always wanted to overload in every area of the pitch. So that gave me something different to think about in terms of how I wanted my team to play. So for me, I've tried to get a combination of both. And as you say, back to your previous question, if I can get the balance right from being a really organised team and hard to play against, and we can get the right players in that can hurt oppositions, I think we can move it forward. Okay, so basically what you've just told me, that gives us a little head start for Monday Night Football. So I'm sure we're having a look at your side there. I'm sure you and Gary will find everything out anyway. Yeah, we work it out. Sends out back, don't you? How long it takes us. But how different are players now, and how different is it for you to manage new generation of players, younger players? Are they different? And what's it like for you? Because you were a leader as a player, you were a figurehead at Liverpool. Everyone looked up to you. It's probably the same now as a manager because you've got that role and seniority. But tell me what it's like. What are the personalities like? Are they different now? I think it doesn't really matter what the personalities are. I think it's on me where I've got to get to know them. And you've got to build relationships with all your players. I think first and foremost from every player, they want your trust. They want to know if you've got the back. I think the game's changed in a lot of ways in terms of going into dressing rooms and throwing things about and screaming in people's faces. Don't get me wrong, there's still certain individuals that might need that, but you need to know whether he needs that, because I think how it's changed is maybe you can lose a player very quickly in this day and age. So that's on me to get to know these players extremely well. what buttons do they need pressing? Some do they need an arm around them? Do they need a bit more love and support? Do they need a bit more encouragement? Or are they the type where you can go for them? You know, have they got that strength where you can go for them in a 1v1 in front of people? Different things float different boats. So that's for me. But I think it's easy for us in this position to say, oh, the dressing room's changed, the game's changed, you can't do this anymore, you can't do that. No, it's on me to adapt. It's on me to be better in front of them and have better relationships so they trust me.
On Sunday, you're coming up against Leicester. Brendan Rodgers, a manager you know really well, and that was the sort of competition when you originally went up to Scotland. I mean, how much have you taken from what you learned or watched from Brendan? You mentioned you're trying to sort of integrate that with maybe the pragmatic style of maybe a Gerard Houllier or a Rafa Benitez. How difficult is it to get that balance between the two?
That's a challenge, 100%, but I think I learnt a lot off Brendan, probably more off Brendan than the previous ones because of the age I was at. So under Houllier, for example, I wasn't really a top student of the game. I wasn't really that interested in the tactical side of it. Probably the early days under Rafa as well. It probably wasn't until the back end of Rafa and Brendan where I've started thinking about my own game intelligence, how I've got to adapt my game to do a job for the team. And that's when I probably started taking a little interest in the coaching side of it and the management side of it. But I believe if I'd have worked with Brendan earlier, I think we'd have had more success together for sure, because I did rate him. I think he's a top coach, very slick the way he delivers it. I think he's really good in his one-to-one stuff, how he manages dressing rooms and individuals. So if I didn't take stuff off Brendan, I didn't learn off him, I'd be very stupid and naive, because for me, I think he's going to manage at the top for a long time. And I experienced that as a player. I've seen it from afar. I've competed against it as a coach and a manager. I've learned tons off Brendan, and I won't admit to say that I've stole a few things off him as well.
Mm-hmm. You've just mentioned two managers there, and Brendan Rodgers and Rafa Benitez, both in management now. Rafa's been in it a long time. How do you see yourself as a manager? Because I think if you're asked those two, or people who've worked with them, you know they're going to be in management for a long time. It's what they do. How do you see Steven Gerrard? Do you see this as a really long sort of managerial career, whether it goes well at certain clubs or it doesn't? Do you think, right, I'll be on to the next job?
Yeah, listen, it doesn't scare me in terms of if a job didn't go well and it was cut short or it ended in a painful way. I mean, I've suffered enough as a player. I've had the journey of highs and lows. I'm man enough to handle the highs and lows of football without a doubt. I don't know in terms of longevity. I don't have any targets beyond Aston Villa. I know a lot of people have been speaking about that in the last couple of weeks. For me, it's very much about staying in the now. So
the Aston Villa job, you've had these first sort of 3 games, now onto your 4th game. You've certainly helped them, certainly when you look at the stats and the numbers, defensively, a lot stronger. Is that a case of a new manager coming in and thinking, right, I've got to fix that first of all, and then we can build on that?
Well, it was pretty obvious, and I'm sure you and Gary will pick up. Previously, this team were 8th best scorers in the Premier League in terms of goals scored. That's not bad. That's not far off where you're probably going to try and take it moving forward. So you knew they were a dangerous team, capable of scoring. If you look at the squad, there's a lot of talent in them positions. But when I took the role, they were 18th in terms of conceding goals. So for me, it was a red flag, and it was something that we needed to obviously improve. So in the early days, the sessions, the days in the first week, it was very much about trying to get them messages across first, because we know we've got the talent to go and hurt teams if them players play well. It's very much a case of let's defend our goal better, let's be more organised, let's block certain areas of the pitch, and let's be more aggressive. And can we flip the mentality? I mean, I played with a lot of top defenders, and they were almost a bit like yourself, where they're more thinking about defending the red of their own goal and keeping people away from the goal rather than how the team's playing or what we're creating or scoring. We need our defenders to start thinking a little bit more like that. Let's get more clean sheets, let's be harder to play against, and let's keep dangerous players away from our goal. That helps. That gives you the base to go and perform well from. So yeah,
is that a job offer?
That is a massive thing. I think you're too busy. You're all over the place, aren't you? You won't be able to fit us in.
I can come down once a week if you need a touch. I mean, you've come to Villa. And listen, when a new manager comes in, it normally means things aren't going as well as the club like, and that was the case, even though Dean Smith, obviously, done a really good job at the club. How impressed have you been with the squad? Has it surprised you, the quality within the squad? And And also when a new manager comes in, people automatically thinking, oh, he's bring his own men, his players, changes. I mean, do you think that much needs changing?
No, I think Dean Work done some fantastic work here, and I think the clear thing for me is when you come in and you speak to existing staff who are staying around, whether they be football staff or part of the medical department, everyone speaks well about Dean Smith. Everyone loves him here. They understand he's a local lad. I certainly respect that, and this is not a case of me saying, oh, it's all been wrong, but there's been some fantastic work here. They've signed some top players, the recruitment's been good, so it's very much a case of what's good, what can we improve on, what can we tweak, what can we change, and move it forward from there. But I think there's been some top work here. I think to get Villa where they was, to finish last year in the middle of the Premier League, obviously they were on the back of 5 defeats, but the performances within that probably didn't deserve that. So, no, not at all. For me, very much respected the work that's gone on before, and it's just about can we build on that and try and take it to the next level.
You had a brilliant record at Villa Park as a player. I remember that standing behind you. Think that can be replicated as a manager here?
I hope so, Jay. That's the dream, that's the challenge. I'd love nothing better than to give these fans some good memories and some good times. That's the challenge for all of us together. I think it's ready-made to go and achieve that, but you know, we need to basically crawl before we can walk, if you like. Let's fix the things that need fixing. Let's try and recruit well in the short and the medium term, and then hopefully when the fans are in a better place, they can help us take us where it needs to go.
Okay,
Cheers.
Stevie, good luck.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.